Good evening. An interesting article I want to share with you that I read in the Telegraph. As ever, I'll post the link. Here we are. Paying cash in hand is diddling the country, says the HMRC. Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs. That's who taxes baby. In an interview with the Daily Telegraph, Mr. Harnett says that householders have a duty to ensure that other people do not evade paying their tax. Paying a builder or cleaner in cash, allowing them to evade VAT or income tax, will result in deeper government cuts to public services, he says. People who contribute to the economy cannot then complain about austerity measures, he adds. Tax providing the funding to run the country, hospitals, schools, everything else, he says. Every time someone pays cash in order not to pay VAT, the nation is diddled, whatever diddled means, but sucked dry or scammed, whatever. Speaking to a newspaper for the first time in 18 months, Mr. Harnett, the Permanent Secretary for Tax and HMRC, signals a major clampdown on the very rich. By the way, this Mr. Harnett, he was basically the head of the HMRC, Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs, basically the top man, and it's him that's come out with this. So obviously the government's scrambling for money as ever, and like in my last video, I kept on stating why now, and this article relates to that. Why now? Well, basically we all know the answer. The government's broke, and they're doing anything they can to get their hands on people's money. And as ever, it's the little guy they want. They're coming after the little guy. They're spreading fear in the little guy. But I'll read on. There's not much. There's a little bit to read. I have read it all before, mind you. But I'll just post the link. But you get the. I don't need to read the whole thing. Like you get the drift. I have to bore you. I'll post the link. Basically now cash is evil. Evil. How dare you, tradesmen, hard-working tradesmen, work hard and get paid in cash? It's never a problem before, but now because the government's so broke, we got a massive budget deficit. Debt to DDP's going to the moon. Unemployment is going to the moon. People losing jobs left, right and centre. Students are graduating with their super AA polished dick degrees and can't get jobs. And polished boobies for the girls there that got these pieces of paper that they've been at uni for, getting drunk for the last 4 or 5 years, having a great time, and coming into the real world and realising, fuck, I should have just got a job 6 years ago. I'd probably be running my own company by now, but no, I decided to go to uni and chase this bullshit dream to get a piece of paper. I fancy a bit of cardboard. Now they're scrambling. So the whole education system's, or the bubble, is bust. Housing's still in a decline. We don't produce anything in this country. All the cars what we used to produce are getting produced, either being bought by German companies or the factories are in Asia. It's unfertile land. It's very wet, very cold. it's obviously not that, probably been a bit extreme. It is a still a vibrant country, Britain. Don't get it twisted, but in an economical sense, uh, to attract people here and to do business is there's a lot better places in this big wide world. And basically, the government's scrambling. Governments have no money, as Steph Molyneux says. Repeat after me. Governments have no money. And the UK it's in a worse situation than Spain, Italy, Portugal, Ireland, Greece, even America. We're in a worse state than America. And the only thing the UK has is the Bank of England. It is the only thing. If we didn't have our own printing press, our bond yield would be at least 10%. Interest rates would be through the roof, but it's going to be a long, slow death by a billion cuts, maybe even a trillion. As I said before, my last video, we've got the Olympics. Then what? I don't know. I think Glasgow's got the Commonwealth Games in 2014. Maybe one or two things to go on after that, but the country's broke. There is no future. We have no gold, which I'll go into in a minute. I'll go into this stuff in a minute. This lovely yellow metal. Gordon Brown decided to sell over half of Britain's gold. I think it was from 2002 to 2009. I think he sold over 300 tons at £250 an ounce. Britain has less than 300 tons of gold, whereas the EU, which David Cameron decided to veto the EU treaty, combined they have over 10,000 tons of gold. So the EU can actually default in its debt, then pay its way out with gold, or not default and use gold. But these have a base to build on. They have a lot of gold, and they're all in it together. Yeah, they don't have a printing press, don't have their actual own individual currency. Central bank and currency for that matter. Will Greece default? I don't know. It depends if they want to let Greece default. I don't think they do, because it's over disastrous for the euro. Even though Germany enjoy having a cheap euro for exports, they don't want to. They wouldn't want it to get too weak, because then the euro will be seen as worthless. But if it does get too weak, obviously it will benefit the German economy, because a lot of countries will buy their goods, but it's disastrous for the rest of the EU that's still relying on imports, then selling things on. A very weak euro will be disastrous for German manufacturers and companies that have to buy parts from places like China and overseas, because they won't be able to afford them because the euro's too weak. So I think Germany are happy with where the euro is now. In fact, they are very happy. But if it gets a lot weaker, then that's a problem. And it's a problem for America. America doesn't want a very cheap euro, because I think 60% of America's exports come from Europe. Europe's America's biggest customer. So if Europeans can afford American goods, America's going to jump right in and weaken the dollar, a la QE3. Uh, America can't. They can't. They don't want a strong dollar. If you have told you about this book, I may as well get into it a little bit now. Currency Wars, as I've like to make notes when I read, from James Rickards. Basically breaks it down. You can't be. Also, you can be, but you need. Obviously, I've got a whole load of books. Let me show you one or two. Yep. Adam Smith, The Wealth of Nations. Obviously, Robert Kiyosaki, An Unfair Advantage. Where are we? These are just ones I got to hand. I got a lot more elsewhere. Obviously, Rich Dad Poor Dad, and got your Mike Maloney Guide to Investing in Gold and Silver somewhere. Yeah, I can't find it at the minute, but that's just to hand. But you need to do. You can't just sit on YouTube and watch people's videos and watch people's appearances on Bloomberg and CNBC and Sky News and all these finance channels, whatever. I know there's a whole load in America, but there's only so many in Britain. You can't just go off that. You need to do your own research, and I've done more than enough. And obviously, you can never stop learning. But I've learned a lot, and I still pick up one or two things every day if I can. And you need to know these things. And I do believe there is a coming currency crisis, but you need to understand a way how it can play. You can't just say, okay, it's going to be hyperinflation. I'm going to buy it's going to be hyperinflation. That's it. You actually need to do a good bit of research to understand things that you can do along the way to take advantage of certain aspects, or understand certain aspects, instead of just sitting there waiting for someone to make a YouTube video say, okay, that's me, like, I know everything. You need to do your own research. Anyway, well, about this whole tax thing, as I say, they're going to come after the little guy. Whereas if you read the whole article, and I know this before anyway, the Inland Revenue, they let Vodafone off of over £6 billion in tax. £6 billion that is. So I can only imagine what that is in dollars. I can't see what it is, but they let Vodafone off with £6 billion in unpaid taxes. £6 billion. Now, I've not done a lot of maths and the British population and what the British people bring in, but £6 billion is a lot of money, and it would take a lot of British people, I think, a good number of years to pay the Inland Revenue, Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs, £6 billion in tax, whereas they let off one company. And it goes on. It says as well they let off Goldman Sachs as well. I don't know how many billions let Goldman Sachs off, but if they let Vodafone off with £6 billion, God knows what they let Goldman Sachs off. Goldman Sachs off. So it just tells you the governments are bought off. They can't touch these corporations. It's officially a fascist regime that we're under. When the corporate and when the corporate and the state merge, it's fascism. And these guys, these corporations, own the government. It's like I see on my Twitter. I'm on Twitter, as you know. You can find my Twitter if you go on my channel. You see my Twitter. This whole cash thing doesn't help but make you reason with people that are all into the whole David Icke conspiracy thing about ID chips and doing away with cash completely, and the elites, lizard shape shifting, puppet string controllers are going to insert chips, ID chips in all human beings, and if you don't act right, they're going to switch your chip off, and you won't exist. You won't be able to spend money, and kind of similar to the movie Time, that Justin Timberlake thing, where they have time and all that thing on their wrist. But you can't help but feel sympathy for these people, or kind of like, you got a point. I try to tend to stay away from that because I don't like getting all serious and worked up and demanding that you know things that you actually really don't know, if you know what I mean. You actually don't know. Well, I've spoken about that before in the past. Like, people always say, do you think 9/11 was an inside job? Keyword is think. You never say, you can't say 9/11 was an inside job because, or, well, you can, but you don't actually know. That's what I mean. Like, I believe 9/11 was an inside job. Whatever, if it wasn't, they took advantage, blah blah blah. But the whole thing about you don't actually know things, but people are like certain they actually know it's a fact, even though it's not a fact, if you know what I mean. But you can't help but this whole cash thing. You can't help but reason with them. Like, the way the mainstream media works, it starts off in the broadsheets, the broadsheet newspapers, which is your Heralds and, or in the States, I don't know, the big, just say financial papers that the sheeple don't read. Then it kind of filters its way down to the bullshit papers with bird girls with their tits out that 15-year-olds and 18-year-olds and 20 whatever year olds your law society read. I forgot the terminology for them. I can't think. But the common papers, you know what I mean? The cheap ones that everyone buys, and in Britain it's the Sun newspaper. Rupert Murdoch owned, I may add. Well, it filters down to them papers like months later. But subconsciously, it'll be in people's heads. They probably pick it up and read a headline, but headlines stay in people's, logged up in people's brains subconsciously for years, and they don't know it. So that's why when they come to get ID chips and all these government propaganda schemes, and yes, vote for war, and yeah, I'm all for it, even though it's bullshit, but people subconsciously think it's right because something in the back of their brains telling them, yeah, somehow that kind of resonates. So there will be people queuing up to get these chips, and yeah, it's a good thing, but they have no chance of getting chips on me and you. Maybe potato chips, but none of this crazy currency, digital ID chips. Not happening. But these people just continue to make us little human beings, us pathetic little hard workers, feel bad and guilty. And it's actually quite pleasing that most people here actually vote, nearly 7,000 votes, and the majority of people have overwhelmingly voted yes, as in it's not up to me to force other people to pay their tax. None of their business. Someone comes in that does a job, pay them, just like you've been doing for decades, I don't know, centuries. Just pay them, and they can do what they want as long as they do their job. And I was going to say something but I forgot, but then I'll move on. It's interesting because the Telegraph, it's actually quite a good paper, and I've never seen this before. I've gone before, and there's always these things, but recently I've not noticed this, the link for gold, and there's lots of articles. about the yellow metal, which is interesting that they've had they actually put a link just specifically for gold. There was actually something that was on this that I'm going to show you. Britain's biggest gold fund could pay dividends for the first time in a decade, which I found interesting. BlackRock Gold and General Fund. I done a video about them before. If you go back, I can't remember what video it was, but I done a video about this fund. They're going to start paying a dividend for the first time in decades, or a decade, sorry, which is interesting. So I think they did before in the 90s and before. So that was obviously during the last gold and silver bull market, and doing it again. But the fact that they're doing it now is kind of tell me that we're slowly entering into bubble territory. I say that very, very discreetly and very sarcastically. But when you start getting commercial assets, that's when you need to kind of think to yourself, right, okay, something big's brewing. They've just switched the kettle on, I think, and it could be a while yet till it starts bubbling, but the heat is on, so just be careful. But it was interesting, like, you click on personal finance, and I've never seen, just because you know, just like now, because us so-called gold bugs, as soon as you see gold anywhere, you latch on, but that wasn't there before, and now it's there. And they got all the links to the gold articles. But I'm wearing this hat. This is my symbolic hat that I wear that no one knows. Represents my buffalo. Or maybe, or do I have buffaloes? You don't know. But I love these coins. Unfortunately, I'm going to be accumulating more British bullion, but when I did start off, I was I was buying the most popular coins in the world, and this is one of the most popular, carries the biggest premium, and I think of any gold coin. Dealers will pay over spot for these coins, so that's why I like them, and that's why I like this hat. So I think that's it. I think I've bored you enough tonight, so time to go.